before I come back, tell him if he says something, tell him I'll be right back.
Hello there.
Hello, John, I'll be right back.
Good to see you.
I need to get the student the syllabus.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Hello.
Here, is that Judy? Hi there.
Yes, sir.
Good to see you.
Nice seeing you.
We'll be going here in a sec.
Okay.
All right, if I can get my buttons all to work. Good to see everyone. Good to hear from you. Hope everyone's doing well. Now, I want to say this up front. I've had some computer problems with my personal computer. I'm turning my phone off right now. If you haven't already done so, please do. Y'all with me? Yes, sir. Everyone? Question? Anyone? Need help? Y'all with me? Okay. I want to make sure in here with me in Levelland and Lubbock and Plainview. I don't see Lubbock. Y'all are there though, right? I'm not sure why we're not seeing you on screen. Let me see if I can do a little manipulation here. Y'all don't want that. That's this class. Hello. Wave to the camera. Okay. Anyway, we'll see. I'm not worried about it. Y'all can hear me though, Lubbock. Can you hear me, Ms. Betts? Can you see me? Hello? Come in, Tojo. Okay, I'm going to go check on that real quick. Y'all can hear me well in Plainview, right, Judy?
Yes, sir.
All right, good. Thank you for being there. Let me go check on this real quick. One of the things that we're going to do today, I'll talk to you about schedule now. I mentioned this the other day, and I'll just put your minds at ease. I'm not going to give you a review sheet today. We will not have a test next Monday. I'll delay that for a week. So that's one of the things I've been working on planning and trying to weed through all this material in this book and hone it down to what the key points are. So, hold your applause till later, but we're working on that. Come on in. I'll be right back. Hope everyone's doing well. We're going to get, hopefully, Lubbock on the line here in a moment. I understand that there are a lot of things going on. There's a lot of people dealing with all kinds of things. I used my asthma inhaler this morning, and so I think I have enough breath to continue for an hour or so. So I'll do my best. But what I was saying earlier, I've had computer problems at home, and I've got a newer iPad used, but my main workhorse computer is an older MacBook Pro, and it's just, and I boosted, I put a solid state drive in it, so it's like this great machine, but it's older, and so I've been having trouble with it, so I had to do a bootable hard drive, create that last night, and I think it solved some of my problems, but it's held me up in doing some things. But I thought, I don't need to go too fast right now, because this is introduction, right? We're just talking about what art is, but I want to say this right now. The main part of this introduction in the text, all these pages up till about, where am I here? Up till about, goodness, really the first intro and the first couple of chapters, it's all about what things art can be. But it's mainly about this one thing, and that art is communication, right? It's communicating something. And let me find my, there we go. And this is where I want to be right now, I do believe. And I'll continue with what I was going to do the other afternoon, Tuesday. But I want to make a point about this. Communication, and I'll say this to students, I'll tell you all, maybe many times, that communication is very important. It's important in the relationship. It's important in our relationship. Some of you have emailed me back and forth and told me you had to be gone for certain reasons, or I have this question. So that's key, isn't it? I mean, the lack of communication is the beginning of a death in a relationship, right? So communicate. And that's good for relationships, but when you think about looking at a work of art, there's a relationship there, isn't there? Because you're communicating and you think, well, I'm just looking at it. But if you're actively trying to learn something from it, it speaks to you, it can speak to you. Not all works do. Not all works do it as well. But we have to give something to it. We have to listen to a friend who's talking to us, right? For that communication to take place. So what I'm trying to get you to see is all these different things that are put in this text that we've looked at so far. It talks about what art can be. Just to cut to the essence of it, that's really what it's all about, is getting to where art is communicating something. And here's where I want to start today and give you notes. Now, I'll say this just ahead of time. I said the other day that I was going to try to give you notes today. I've changed all that. I'm going to do it a week from today, and then I'll send those to you in an email, and then I'll post them on Blackboard. I've had some issues with getting things on Blackboard, but I'm not going to have very much on Blackboard. Some of you have asked me that. I'm not going to have really many assignments for you to do. I know some of the art appreciation classes are doing that, and hooray for them. Their students may not think it's so great, but that's fine. But really, if you are art history majors, boy, I could lay it on. And I would expect a great deal from you. And I'd expect you to know names and dates and artists and periods of time and so on. We're going to learn that. This is an art appreciation class for non-art majors, right? So we're going to learn that. But if I hammer you with all those things, you're going to turn me off. And I would understand that. But I'm going to try to give you the things that really matter. Come in. How are you? Good, how are you? Glad you're here. So,
Ms. Hope,
yeah.
when you get a chance, would you send me the information about the class? Again, I have another student that came in today, and I could not find it in my email.
Did you?
The syllabus?
Did you delete it? Okay.
I don't know where I put it though.
Okay, I will send it to you a little later.
Thank you.
Yes, if, it may be at the end of class, but if you'll hang on, I'll send that, at the end of class around 2.
Okay, that'll be great.
Thank you. I'm glad glad you're back.
That's what I was looking for.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so, communication, right? And you know, with all the technology we have in this lab, they spend a lot of money putting this lab in, but we've got connections to Lubbock and Plainview, and when it all works great, it's wonderful. When it doesn't, it's just one of those things. So we just deal with it the best we can. Now, here's where I was going to be. This idea of what art is, I want to distill it down to 3 main things. The text says this, and I'm not giving you page numbers, but it gets to this eventually, and it talks about what art is, and let's see if I can find this. Well, somewhere here. It talks about, you know, all the things. Art has religious meaning, it does all these things, but about page 47, it gives you this. So let me see if I can put this up on screen here and talk about this specifically. That's not it. And that's what we want. This is what should be in your notes. Because all art is 3 main parts: subject, form, and content. Now, I'll hit each of these individually here in a moment. But make sure you understand this. And it doesn't matter how realistic the art is or how abstract it is. We can say it's all subject, form, and content. Now, this will be in your notes, but remember what I said about if you write it down, you're going to internalize it? Or you type it with your thumb? Whichever you do. Some of you have your keyboards there, and you prefer to take notes that way. Anyway, subject, form, and content. Now, let's talk about those, what they are. Subject is the image or images that are shown in a work of art. It's what it's about, right? The subject. And you may say, the subject, Mr. Hope, is just a bunch of paint or a big red area. Okay, that's the subject. Sometimes realistic, sometimes abstracted, sometimes non-objective. Then, content. Content is the meaning behind the image. I really believe content is the spark that the artist started with. I'm going to see if I can work my camera and get me back on there. That's not what I want. That's all right. it's more meaningful than looking at me. So, content, and then form. Now, some people give them in different order. The overall structure of the work of art, it's how it's put together, right? So the subject and the form and the content. Now, let me go back to these for a minute and just start here. Which would you say that Mr. Hope thinks is the most important? They're all important. But which is the most important? What? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it is the thing that gives the artist the spark of the idea. It's the motivation for doing it in the first place. And it's part of the message of getting it to us in that communication, right? So the subject is important, absolutely. What is depicted, and whether it's realistic or whether it's abstracted or whatever, the image is important because you choose those images as an artist to help get that process of communication going. But the content, the meaning behind the image is important, but the form and the way it's put together and the organization of it is also very important in doing this. So, I missed my slides the other day, and so I wanted to get to that and point that out to you. So, if you got your text, it's on page 47, in maybe a little different form, talks about this. But now let me see if I can move on from there and close this and then get back to where we were the other day. And basically what I'm going to try to sum up to you is all the way to page 101 or 100 in the text. But the first part up until now, it's mainly just been introduction, right? I'm not going to test you over any of that except what I just told you. And that's those things about what art is. And remember this too. Let me get back to here. Art is communication, right? It is getting a message across to you. And part of what we have to think about in art appreciation is just that thing. It's appreciating it, right? And to appreciate it, that process of dialogue has to happen. Because it's not just the artist sending this message out or putting something on a gallery wall or posting it on the internet or putting it in a textbook, but it's us looking at it and responding to it, or just looking at it and flipping the page. I'm not cool with that. But maybe if we take some time and look at it and think about it a little bit more, learn more about it, we will get something more from it. It's just like any relationship. If you don't listen to your friend's story, they understand you don't care and you're not getting anything from it. So, some things that we can remember there now. Well, let me see if I can get to this and I'll put this up. This is the front of the textbook. Don't write all this down. I'm going to, again, cut to the chase. I haven't fine-tuned these slides because I've had computer problems. We looked at this the other day, right, which is, pardon me. Where are we? Does anyone have that page number? Barnett Newman's painting here, is this abstracted or is it non-objective? This is on page 35. It's not objective, it's just color, right? But he really had, a meaning behind it, and he talked about Voice on Fire being something that was very meaningful to him because the colors had meaning to it. But like I said before, when the Canadian government spent money on this, they spent $1.5 million US, 1.76 million Canadian. People objected to it. So it's that kind of thing, and so it depends on us partly, what we get from it. This B number one on that same page is, not depicting anything from the natural world, which means it's non-objective. But it expresses an idea, and he said, be who you are, be true to yourself, be all you can be. And those ideas that were meaningful to him, he tried to think of what would embody that idea and put it into this painting with just a color and a line. Now, I have trouble, as much as I've looked at art and studied art, I have trouble just walking into a gallery and seeing this and understanding that message. I can appreciate it for what it is. So it can go on a lot of different levels. And we scanned through this the other day, and we looked at Kai Guoqiang's Fire Ladder and some other things. And the thing that the text talks about is we experience art with all of our senses. And there may be something that appeals visually to us, but it may bring up other sensations. And it may try to put us into an experience. We talked about idealized beauty. We'll talk about that more. But I want to kind of scan through these things and get to a point here where we were the other day. Yeah, I think we're past all this. Yeah, we talked about these things. So let me skip forward to the next chapter. I'm making sure I'm not missing anything. And that's this chapter on art elements, which begins, if I can get there, at chapter 2 and page 66 and 7. That begins that chapter. There we go. Now, I want to show this. This is not in your text, but I wanted to show you this. Have any of you read this book or seen the movie? I highly recommend it to you, because it was a group of men and women from the U.S. and in Europe, people working maybe under the threat of death if they were discovered, to save the art treasures of Europe. Now, I'll talk about this later, but Hitler was very disturbed, a megalomaniac, mass murderer. The list is very long. But he had this idea that he was actually an architect and art student. Did y'all know that? A failed student. And people, when you see his drawings, the people are they almost look like insects, and people say, well, you can read a lot into that his opinion about people was very low. His opinion of himself was very low, even though he tried to build himself up to the leader of the entire world. What he wanted to do, he designed this with his architects, a museum that would house all the artwork in the world that he deemed good. Now, some of it was destroyed by the Nazis under Hitler's orders. But he wanted to take all the things that he liked, and he thought were great, including a lot of art that would glorify the Nazis, and put it in this huge museum. And the museum was so big, they were going to build it in Berlin, it could not be actually built. And so these men and women, some art experts, some in different fields, and then people working behind the scenes in Europe to help, they saved these art treasures. But there's still maybe thousands still lost. We don't know if they were destroyed. A few years ago, they found this in Munich, Germany. They found this apartment house of this man who was a descendant of one of Hitler's officers, and he had an entire floor in this apartment building that was filled with art that was stolen by the Nazis. So it may still surface, who knows? But The Monuments Men was written by a guy from Dallas who knew about this. He went and interviewed these men and women that had served in World War II in the service of the government here and in Europe, the Allied forces. And it's an amazing book. The movie, these are the characters in the movie that play some of the real characters. The movie's pretty factual, but they do Hollywood on it, just like so many things. There's some that's not factual. But if you've not seen it, I recommend it to you if you have an interest in that period of time, because it shows how they saved these art treasures. Here's one of the churches, it's an actual photograph, and that's artwork stacked up, frames stacked up, filling this church. And the Nazis fled when the Allies came into Normandy, and the Nazis realized that it was all over, so they left this behind. They put some things in salt mines. That's where this is. They actually intended to flood the salt mine and just destroy this work. Some of it they had rigged with explosives. This is Hitler's prize. This is the Ghent altarpiece. And he wanted this more than anything else. Now, just look at this for a minute and think about this. This is a triptych. It's an altarpiece that's hinged. Can you see where the hinges are there? That central piece has God in the center, and there's John the Baptist, there's the Virgin Mary. Over on the left you see Adam, and on the right you see Eve. And then you see different visions that the Van Eycks had. That gray panel down there has been repainted from a photograph, but it's gray in this photo because it's still missing. We don't know if it was destroyed by the Nazis or what happened to it. But they've repainted it so it can be there. But this is how, now look at the date again. Around, see the C period? That means circa, right? Around that date, 1432. This was painted when oil paint was just being invented. And so it gave artists the time to work for long periods of time and do great detail with these brilliant colors that were just available. But look at the amount of detail that's in this. This is life-size face, maybe a little larger than life-size. That's Adam's face. Now, no one knows exactly what Adam looked like. This is the depiction. And I've had someone say, well, they even have all the detail in the eyelashes and even the nostril hairs. Well, they didn't have scissors in those days, or trimmers, right? So it's all there, right? This is the first man. And the detail in that, and the detail in God's crown, this is God, the Father, and his crown with all the jewels in it, and this is actual gold leaf behind there that they use. It's an incredible piece. And there's Eve, and that's the forbidden fruit. It's not an apple. This is the Van Eyck's depiction of what the fruit was. What? Yeah, it's a fruit. It's not a pine cone, not a nut, but it's like nothing from the real world. So that's just that's how they felt to depict it. But the beauty in the detail in this painting is incredible. And despite Hitler's thoughts about, he had all these occult beliefs, the spear of destiny and all this crazy stuff, he still wanted this biblical themed work. And that was his prize. He didn't get it. It was saved, thank goodness. And I won't spoil it for you if you watch the movie or read the book, how they saved it. This is an angel depicted here. I have people say, I don't want to ruin anybody's concept of things, but our pastor a while back said, we don't become angels, folks. Angels are created beings. They serve God and they serve to minister to us, and they're very special creations of God. And here they're praising God and praising the Lamb, and here's the Lamb, which is a symbol of whom? Christ, who sacrificed for the sins of the world. And here this cup catching the blood, the angels kneeling and praising this sacrifice in Christ, and you see the holy rays that are coming out there. Now Hitler wanted that more than anything. And I want to talk to you a little bit about 9/11 today, so I'm not going to get real far with this. But we talked about this the other day, this idea of what art can mean, and I can't say enough about that idea of communicating things and how people put that into symbols and so on. Now, we looked at iconography the other day, right? We talked about that. And so these symbols that are in this work here, some are very evident and some aren't. But that idea of communicating with these symbols that people very readily understood in 1432 when they came to the church. This is at the front of the church in Ghent. And people understood this. Now, your author goes on and talks about these different things. I'm not going to go through all this, but it talks about Vincent van Gogh. And there's a lot of mystery around Vincent, but Vincent wrote so many letters and communicated so much about his thoughts. Vincent was a tortured soul in a lot of ways. He failed at everything he did. He felt like he was a failure as an artist. He only sold one painting in his whole life, and ended probably taking his own life. There's speculation that someone shot him, but very likely took his own life because he was just despondent, and he felt like he had failed as an artist. But he painted right now in Dallas. And if you go to Dallas in the next little while, I can't go. I'd love to see the exhibit. I've been to the Vincent van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, and I recommend it to you. I talk about going to Europe. I want to tell you all before we're through the semester how you can plan right now to go to Europe someday. You may not have to wait till you retire from your job to do it. I had a student sitting in this class one time, and he kept nodding at things, and then he would interject and say, well, when we were there, I saw this. I said, so tell me how you went to Europe. And he said, Mr. Hope, my parents helped me with my school. They helped me with my vehicle and my insurance. But he said, I work all summer long. He worked in the oil field. He worked at farms and ranches down south of Midland somewhere. And he said, I work 2 extra jobs, and I save all my money, and my friends and I, on a shoestring, go to Europe every year. We've done it. Will be our 3rd year. And I said, that's great. And I said, it's easy if you know what to do, right? And he said, yeah. I said, my wife and I took a backpack. We saved all this money for years, and the most expensive thing is the plane fare, and then you get a train pass, and you can go all over. So put that in the back of your mind somewhere. The Uriel system. It's amazing. High-speed trains in places. Yeah, Amtrak. Amtrak wishes they could be Uriel. I mean, they're not. I mean, you can get some really not the best trains. They're not air conditioned or anything, but you can go first class. It's amazing. And you get on these high-speed trains. They're going nearly 200 miles an hour, and it's just as smooth as silk. So you can get from place to place easily, and bus travel and trolleys in cities. But I want to put that in the back of your mind. But there's an exhibit in Dallas right now about Vincent van Gogh. One of my friends on Facebook sent me a picture the other day that they're there. But Vincent, we're talking about the visual elements of art, but we'll kind of get into it by this. Vincent painted these peasant people when he was there working. He had been working as a minister. He was a minister of the gospel. And the church finally fired him because he did what Jesus said. If your neighbor needs this, give it to him. And he finally gave away almost everything he had, even his furniture and his food and all the money he was earning. And the church said, that's despicable. But he said, well, they needed this. So here were these poor people that were just subsisting on potatoes. And he said, I should be desperate if my figures were correct. Real artists do not paint things as they are, but as they feel them. My great longing is to learn to make those very incorrectnesses, that's a word, isn't it? This is translated. Vincent did write English very fluently. Those deviations, remodelings, changes in reality. Changing reality. Doing it his own way. So that they may become, yes, lies if you like, but truer than literal truth. And here's his letter that says that. And, that may be in English. Some of the other letters. He wrote almost daily letters to his brother Theo. And, do y'all know who Vincent Price is? Kind of the old horror movies. Vincent Price, was a very trained Shakespearean actor, but he ended up doing a lot of horror movies you see on the late shows on movie channels. But Vincent Price was in Lubbock one time at the Allen Theater, and he read from the letters to Theo, back and forth between Theo and Vincent. And Theo had a good job, and he sent money to his brother so he could buy canvases and paint and so on. So Vincent was all excited about what he was creating and would write these letters, and this is one of them. He'd do these sketches, and those are amazing treasures, because you don't always get what an artist thinks. They just create. And so these are great things. And he did this painting of this cafe, and he said he tried to express the passions, and he said really this is a place where people can ruin themselves because they were drinking, and they're drinking something called absinthe. Don't ever drink that. Don't drink, but especially don't drink that. And you can see the passion that he put into this. I hope you get to go to New York City to the Museum of Modern Art and see this. You've seen it? Yes, it's powerful, isn't it? It's thick too, right? Yeah. Tell me what you thought about it.
I like it. I didn't realize how many other colors are there in real life that you can't see.
Yeah, this doesn't do it justice. This doesn't do it justice. The best way for me to show you an artwork is for us to catch a bus out here and go to the airport and go there. Fly to New York and walk into the Museum of Modern Art and say, we're the students from South Plains College, and we want to see Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night. And you walk up to it. Now think about this for a minute too. This is over 3 feet wide. You were seeing it on this screen, right? Think about it. It gets you, doesn't it, when you walk in there? And if you get up close enough, you can't get too close, you can't touch things, but you can get to the side and you can see how Vincent built up the paint thickly on here. Thick brush strokes. Sometimes he used his fingers and manipulated the paint. Because he felt this, he didn't see a sky like this, but he felt something powerful about this beautiful night sky. You've seen the moon phases here lately, bright moon that we've had. Jupiter's been out there, you can see it, some of the other stars and so on. But Vincent wanted to paint how he felt about it. And the emotion in this is very important. Now, what did we talk about content earlier? Well, here's the subject. It's this village and this cypress tree that has all these undulating forms in it. But Vincent's form and how he made the sky with this paint and mixed the colors and thickly put on the paint, but his content and what he felt was probably premier. It's the thing that really stood out. And there's a portrait of Vincent. This is the one I think they've got a big poster of. I really object. I need to go through and fine tune this, because this is from the, now in the text it's okay, but these are the slides they provided with this book, and these are just not as clear as they should be. I think your monitor is better than mine. I need to adjust my monitor or do something. Get me a different one. Anyway, you can see even in this portrait of Vincent, and he did dozens of these portraits. Even one after he did cut his ear off. Most people think that Vincent was upset and he was insane. He did check himself into an asylum, but I have a published report from an art critic who studied art and a doctor who worked together to go through Vincent's notes and even go to the hospital where he was treated, and they think he had Meniere syndrome. Y'all know what that is? It's a severe inner ear infection and malady, and they can treat it with medication today, but I know a young lady who grew up with my sons, and she has Meniere syndrome. She said every day it's like I wake up, okay, what's it going to be like today? even with medication. And I think she had surgery. So Vincent, he had this, he was dizzy all the time with this, if that's what he really had, and they really feel like that there's evidence for that. So, bless his heart. And yet he did hundreds and hundreds of paintings. The Amsterdam Vincent van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, Holland, 3 floors, chock full of things, and they're in every major museum all around the world. It's powerful. And he did that in less than 10 years. He had a passion, and you could see it in his work. So the content, yeah. So again, I'm gonna start here. So we talked about communication, right? So art uses visual elements. We can see them to communicate ideas. They're things we sense. Now there's some people that are visually impaired and they can sense art with their sense of touch, but we're blessed with our vision. I've had my eyes injured and had them patched up for a while, and boy was I glad that they healed. So art uses the visual elements. Now the elements, any of you studied the table of elements in the universe? Have they discovered all the elements in the universe yet? They still add to it, don't they? It's amazing. But they're the basic building blocks, right? And I always call the elements, and don't list these, just look at them, because I'm going to give them to you one by one later. I always call the elements the ingredients in the recipe. They're the language of art. There we go. They're the ingredients. Write this down. The elements of art are like the ingredients in a recipe. Now, I'll say more about this later because I'm going to leave some time to talk about 9/11. And that's important, and what art does with that, and what art has done and still does. But they're the ingredients in a recipe. If I'm not a great cook, my wife is a wonderful cook. My mom was a great cook. Bless you, bless you. Tissue if you need it. My dad really was a pretty good cook, but my mom worried about me when I left home. I moved away from the farm, moved to Lubbock to finish tech, and because I was the skinny kid and she thought I'd starve to death, so she showed me a few things, but I really learned to cook some things. And let's say if you were going to make pancakes, yeah, you can go and get the pan kit and tear the top off and dump it in a bowl and pour some milk in there, right? But if you're making pancakes from scratch, you've got to have the ingredients, right? So I need flour, right? What else? Eggs. Milk, maybe even buttermilk. What? Butter, oil, baking powder. Yeah. Blueberries. Yeah, you do it from scratch. Yeah. I love those too. But you see where I'm going with this? We're getting the ingredients right to this recipe, and we stir it up and we make some yummy pancakes. If I were doing a really good lesson, I'd have my hot plate up and serve it pancakes, right? But you get the idea. These things right here, they're the ingredients in art. And the list can differ. Your text has it in pretty much this order: line, shape, value, color, texture, space and form, mass, volume, time, and motion. We're going to go through these one by one, so don't worry about making a list of them, because we're going to spend time on them. But this idea that they are the way to communicate, and this idea of the style, subject, form, and content is embodied in this. So we'll take up next time line, and we'll talk about that. So don't worry about that right now. But remember just this, that these elements are just the basic building blocks, just like the elements on the table, right? A table of elements. They're the things that are put together to make a work of art. Not all of them are used in every artwork. Some artworks don't have color, right? So we'll talk about those in turn, but let me switch to this right now, and we'll pick that up next time. And I want to get to two things right now. Let's see if I can go here and, see if we don't get a corruption message. Yeah, there we go. Now, we'll play this here in just a minute. 20 years ago, 9/11. Actually, the day before that, our son, our oldest son and his wife had moved to New York just a few months before. Our son worked 4 blocks from World Trade Center. The night before, and he likes to tell stories, he likes to talk, he called my wife, which she thought it was kind of unusual that he called on that night because he usually called on a certain night. And he was telling her all about his work, but then he detailed every step that he took from his apartment to take the dog to doggy daycare, catch this taxi, and then go to this subway stop. And then at a certain time I get on this other subway line and I go here and then I walk a certain way to get to my work. And she was just going, oh, okay, yeah. And she was thinking, why is he telling me all this? Well, later she thought, God told him to tell me this. Because of 9/11, when that happened, and you all are too young to know what it was like. But my friend next door, I taught at Levelland High School then, my friend next door to me taught journalism, and we shared a storeroom between us. Her daughter was also living and working in Manhattan at the same time. And she came in and she said, turn on your TV. And I had a TV in the room to show art videos. And so I turned it on. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I called my wife. She said, are you watching this? And I said, yes, honey, I am. She said, let me tell you something. She was crying. We were all upset. We were seeing this, the students, everything just kind of came to a standstill because it was an attack on the U.S. and thousands of lives were at jeopardy and were lost that day. But my wife said, okay, here's the time and here's where Daniel was right this time. And he's safe. He didn't even get to work when this happened. And I said, how can you be sure? And she said, I've tried to call him. All the towers, all the communication towers were down. No cell phone service, no nothing. We didn't hear from him until almost 8 o'clock that night. And then he described part of it, and he said, I have the worst headache I haven't ever had in my life. And he saw the horror up close. His wife worked in another area of Manhattan where she could see the towers on fire and see them go down. They couldn't even talk to each other. He walked for like 40 blocks to get to her because there's no buses. He said people were hanging on buses. Subway service stopped, everything. And it went dark on him, so he walked up top and got up the stairs and then saw this nightmare that was happening. So we were all so blessed when we finally realized that they were going to be okay. And my wife said, God told him to tell me that, so we knew that he would be all right. But I want to show you this. I'm going to play this for you.
My birthday was September 9th, so I had just turned 9. My dad was one of the 23 police officers. His name is Ramon Suarez. I miss him a lot. I really do. Seeing his name in the memorial, it means everything.
On September 11th, 2001, the World Trade Center was attacked. It became known as Ground Zero. After years of hard work and rebuilding, the entire site has been transformed into one of beauty and of remembrance. At its heart is the National 9/11 Memorial. Millions of visitors from all around the world come to this site to pay their respects each year. What they see are 2 enormous reflecting pools that sit in the very footprints of where the Twin Towers stood. The pools are surrounded by bronze panels inscribed with the names of the nearly 3,000 people who died in the attacks of 2001 and the World Trade Center bombing in 1993.
When you come to the memorial, you come up to the edge of each one of these voids, and you see this enormous empty space in front of you. It's a space that can't be filled and will not be filled. It is there where you encounter the names of the dead.
first impression you have as a visitor is how many names there are. It's a sea of names over an ocean of tears.
The Memorial Plaza, made up of hundreds of swamp white oak trees, surrounds the memorial pools. One tree is different. It is a Callery pear tree, now known as the Survivor Tree. This tree was at the site on September 11th, 2001, discovered in a pile of rubble by some recovery workers. It was nursed back to health and returns here. And in some sense, it really embodies the whole experience of 9/11 in a living being. It is damaged, but it also shows a tremendous amount of new growth.
And now there are no words to describe how bad it was. The massive debris field, the smell of death completely took over your whole being. To work out of that to where we are now, it was a slow, hard process.
As bad as 9/11 was, it demonstrated that when the times require, we do have the capacity to come together and take care of each other with limitless compassion.
I remember that day. I remember where I was and what I was doing. My generation, we remember growing up with it. It's like you were part of history. Makes me very proud to know that my dad went out to wait for strangers. That's what I call a hero. Nobody ever wants to forget those people that passed away that day. Those people were brothers, wives, mothers, sisters, friends, and those people should be remembered in every way possible.
Every single person that comes here is making a contribution. You truly are our future. Thank you.
Powerful, right? But art, even though this may seem kind of minimalist, the design of this was very well thought out, and art is part of what heals, right? Isn't it an amazing story about that tree? I had friends that were from here, from Sundown, Texas. They loaded up a trailer with all the things, water, food, things that people, blankets, things that people would need. In 2 days, they were there near the World Trade Center, set up, helping any way they could. And there were people from all over the world that did contribute to this memorial. Now, let me close this out and let me get back here. So I want to show you one thing about the museum, because you talked about the museum, and I want to go to this, and maybe it'll pull it up. So I found this yesterday. See my email. Always look for a crank on the side of this so I can make it go faster. Speed it up. There we go. I love it. Okay. It's got a hair trigger on it. This is in a news story I saw last night, and it talks about the museum and the memorial there. It says 9/11 artifacts. These are the things that were found and left over. Share pieces of truth and victim stories, and these are some of the ones that are on display there. This is part of what you saw there. And you talked about how poignant that is. I'll read this. It says, for nearly 6 years, Andrea Haberman's ashen and damaged wallet lay mostly untouched in a drawer at her parents' Wisconsin home, along with partly melted cell phone, her driver's license, credit cards, checkbook, and house keys. Flecks of rust had formed on the rims of her eyeglasses, their lenses shattered and gone. These are things that were returned to her. Those everyday items were remnants of a young life that ended when a hijacked jetliner struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center September 11, 2001, 20 years ago almost. Haberman was 25 and about to be married when she was killed while on a business trip from Chicago, her very first visit to New York City. Her belongings, still smelling of ground zero, evoked mostly sorrow for Haberman's family. And to ease their pain, they donated these artifacts to the 9/11 Memorial and Museum. They're not the happy things you want to remember someone by, said her father, Gordon Haberman. The collection of some 22,000 personal artifacts, some on display at the museum, and others on display at other museums around the country, and I think some are other places in the world now, provide a mosaic of lost lives and stories of survival: wallets, passports, baseball gloves, shoes, clothes, rings. Each person who makes up part of that tally was an individual who lived a life, said Jan Ramirez, museum's chief curator and director of collections. We knew families, the people that have lost a loved one that day, were going to need to have a place, have a way to remember the person that never came home from work and never came home from a flight. And of course the names are a way to do that, but these items, these artifacts that were left there are an essential part of that, because it's something more tangible, isn't it? It's something that they own, something they had that was left. It was not destroyed, that was found. And then it goes on to tell, I won't read the rest of this, I may choke up again. But I do want to not make you sad, because it's just like the Calvary pear tree, the tree that survived, the survivor tree. This nation is about freedom, it's about loving others, and it's about, in spite of horror and hate, it's about triumph and overcoming, just like they said. And art is a part of that. Now, you may see a lot of tributes there in New York. They'll probably read the names, they always do. There'll be the memorial that just opened last year at Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where evidently the heroes on board that flight took over that flight. It was headed for Congress, probably, or the White House. One hit the Pentagon also, but you'll see those memorials. Maybe stop for a little bit and think about that, and I always pray for those people. Many of the families are gone, but this young lady that just spoke on that little clip on YouTube, you'll find those stories out there, and it's something, just like they said, we should never forget. Never forget. And art has its part in communicating that idea, right? So it's not just something that's going to be lost. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, a blessed one. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you Tuesday, and we'll hit it hard. We got some things to cover. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe and well.
Mr. Hope,
Yeah.
I've given him his syllabus. What do you want me to do about the pretest?
You can correct that. Yes. So you did get the syllabus?
Yeah, I have it on one computer and not on the other. It's saved on the other, and I had to get somebody to send it to somebody to get it printed.
Okay, you don't need anything to finish then.
Pretest. No, I don't. I'm fine.
Thank you. All right. I appreciate all you do.
I do.
God bless you.
God bless you.
Take care.